Welcome back to another episode of Not So Status Quo, and Happy New Year, guys. This is our first episode back for 2026, and whether or not you celebrate New Year's or Christmas or other festivities over the December and January period, I hope that you were able to have even a small intentional pause to sit, reflect, and invest into you. Now, if you haven't, that's okay. Today, we're going to talk about what's next. What's next for our lives? How do we determine what's next? Now, today we're not talking about full reinvention of our lives. We have past episodes dedicated to that, so you can go back and listen to those if you're feeling really compelled and pulled to completely reinvent yourself and rediscover who you are. But today we're going to focus on when you know the direction of your life that you're heading, but you just need to do some course corrections. A lot of people feel a lot of pressure at the end of the year to have to come up with their vision boards and New Year's resolutions and goals, and from January 1st, hit the ground running. I've never been a fan of having that pressure placed on myself, but I have used it as an intentional time to reset, revise, and have a look at what worked in the previous 12 months and things that I want to change in the upcoming 12 months. There's no hard or fast rule around this. You can still achieve goals and manifest your desires at any time of the year, but it is a great period of time to just pause and do an intentional reset. Now, in the lead up to December, I was doing my intentional pause, and there were some really uncomfortable conversations that I had with myself, some really exciting conversations I had with myself, and I thought this was a really great topic for us to start the year on. Now, you know that this podcast is all about showing you that there's not one linear path in life. You can change your mind, you can pivot, you can reinvent, you can say no, you can say yes to things that excite you, you can declare your desires and your wants without embarrassment or without shame. This podcast is showing you that you don't have to follow the status quo. You can live a life that is so true and aligned to who you are. And if you make that choice, I guarantee you that your level of happiness, your level of fulfillment will be exponentially higher than if you are catering your world to the comfort zones of others and the desires of others. You know, thinking back about all of the wonderful guests that we had on the show last year, 2025, one thing stood out to me, and that was that a lot of these women had the courage to make change. For some, it came after relocating to a different country. For some, it came after big health scares. For some, it came after divorce. For some, it came after being made redundant from their 9 to 5. There were very common themes. The one takeaway was that they all had the courage to follow what was in their heart, to show up for themselves, to build that self-trust muscle, to build that self-love and that self-belief. Now, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I'm sure all of them aren't exactly where they hope to be in their future. But that doesn't mean that they're not enjoying the journey right now. They have allowed their identity to evolve. And that is a really critical thing that I want you to understand, is that you are allowed to evolve. If you are not evolving, you are staying the same. And I can guarantee you that the life that you are craving, you're not going to get there by living in your comfort zone. Most people drift through life on autopilot. And a lot of people have a very superficial, a very high level, I should say, idea of what they want for their life. So commonly I hear when people have come to me for mentoring, it's, I don't want to stress about bills. I want to be able to take a holiday every year. The problem with lofty goals like this is that they're really hard to action, because you can say that you want to go overseas every single year, but what kind of holiday do you want? Because you might be talking about, if you're an Australian, you might be talking about a trip to New Zealand or Bali, which is going to be considerably cheaper than going on a 5-star holiday for 6 weeks through Europe. So we need to build out the dream a little bit more at minimum than just being like, I want to take a holiday every year, or I don't want to struggle with my bills. Well, what type of bills do you have? because for some people, they'll have far more than others. So it's about building this out, getting a clearer picture. And a lot of people just don't have the level of clarity that will help them even identify when they need a course correct. And then they find themselves just drifting through life. I'm sure, just like me, you've experienced moments, probably many moments, where you're like, where on earth has time gone? And it can feel a little anxiety provoking to think, like, what if another 5 years or 10 years passes me by and I'm not actually closer to the life that I truly, truly want? That I'm still waking up with this sense of this inner knowing that you're just not on the right path. I actually did a video about this the other day. I put it on TikTok. We'll get into that because, yes, you heard me correctly. I'm on TikTok. I never thought I would say those words, but here we are. Anyway, I did this video and I was saying that I believe that there's 3 paths that you're on in life. 2 are very obvious and 1 is not so obvious, but it's the scariest one. The first one is you're on a bad path. You're on a bad path. There might be self-sabotaging behaviors. It could be addictive cycles. It could be where you just wake up every day knowing that I'm just in the wrong job or I'm in the wrong relationship. I'm living in the wrong city. It's just glaringly obvious that this is absolutely not the right path for you. You have a choice and you can change that. Now, the second one on the other end of the spectrum is that you're on your most aligned, abundant, magnetic path. That's the one that hopefully we're all aspiring towards. If you're listening to this podcast, I think that's probably a good assumption to make. You want that feeling where you're so lit up by life, you love your life. Doesn't mean that things aren't going to go wrong, but you're so lit up by your life, you're passionate, you're feeling fulfilled, you're happy, and you know that you are living your purpose, whatever that purpose may be. They're the 2 ends of the spectrum. Now, the one in the middle is the one that I fear the most, and that is where you're on a seemingly good path. On paper, it's a great path. To other people, it looks like a good path. You have a good job, you earn good money, but it's not the job that lights you up. You're in a decent relationship, but you just know it's not the one that you're meant to be in. You have this knowing, but you convince yourself that, well, it could be worse. You never actually convince yourself, well, it could be better. And that's where we see a lot of people. There's that autopilot where they stay in these lives, in these relationships, situations, environments, jobs, you name it, businesses, where time passes them by, they know things could be worse, and they've convinced themselves, oh, I can't change into the career that I'm really passionate about because I earn really good money in this one. That was a trap for me for a lot of my 20s. I thought, damn, I have these 2 degrees, I'm in a particular field, I'm at the ceiling of this field at a young age, and I don't think if I jump into creative industry or something like that I'm going to get paid anywhere near as much. And I knew enough about the life that I wanted to know that money was absolutely an enabler for the life that I wanted. That was going to be full of very, very frequent travel, and I wanted freedom of time as well. So I convinced myself that it was better to stay unhappy in a field that didn't light me up, and that it was okay for me to wake up every morning dreading going to work. Now, I do want to discuss just briefly, I think it's important to learn, and this comes with life experience. It's important to learn the difference between when you need to persevere down a particular path and when you need to pivot. I think this is especially important in 2026 and beyond because society is making us creatures who love instant gratification even more than we ever have. Our attention spans are arguably getting shorter. We are completely inundated with more stimulus than I think humans were ever meant to experience. And we can have a tendency to want to jump ship before we've actually seen things out. And that's something that I've had to really navigate myself and get really good at determining when it's something that I need to legitimately change from, or if it's something that I just need to stick out with some little pivots along the way. The sad thing for me is hearing so many stories of people when they're on their deathbed looking back and feeling like they didn't live a life that was really true to them because they didn't have the courage to bet on themselves and show up for themselves. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I think, will be in that position. So I'm so glad that you're here because it indicates that you actually want the best for yourself. You want to live the happiest, most fulfilling life. And I'm so proud of you for that. So when I'm working with one-on-one clients, I will often tell them to work backwards. We were just talking about how we have some very lofty goals and we probably need to build those out a little bit better in order to be able to know if we are on the right track or not, whether we need to do big pivots or we need to do some minor course corrections. And so one exercise that I generally start with is saying, okay, in 10 years' time, you'll be X number of years. And I say, okay, by the age of 35, 45, 55, what would you like to have achieved in your life? What would you like to have present in your life? What would you not like to have in your life that you have now? And then we go back 5 years, 2 years, 1 year. I'll give you a really good example of how an exercise like this can really open your eyes to help you realize that it is really important to actually have some kind of plan. I've had multiple clients come to me in their late 20s, and a lot of the time they're either in a new relationship or they're not in a relationship at that time. And a lot of them will identify that they want children in the next 5 years. And when I ask how many in that 5 years, they might say 2. And I can remember a couple of clients where I said, okay, so 5 years, you want 2 kids. And like when you're just pulling that out of your head, because you're like, yeah, of course, I want to have 2 kids in the next 5 years. You're not actually thinking about that in a practical way, right? So I'm like, okay, well, how many years do we need to have these children separated? So let's just say 2 years minimum on average, right? 2 to 3 years. So if we count backwards, that means you would need to start having a child in the next 12 months. This can be a bit of a rude shock. However, it's better to do it now and not in a few years' time. So at least you know roughly where you're aiming. You know the goals that you're working towards. They can change over time. We're absolutely not locking ourselves in because it is really, really important to allow room to be delighted in life. However, we know where we're aiming for and we have a direction. We have our true north, and that is the game changer. You can then use that as your decision-making filter. You can then go through your life knowing that there's certain decisions that you need to make that are in alignment with the goals that you're working towards. Now, relationships and children, that's not something that we have all the control over, let's be real, but you get what I'm talking about, I'm sure. So it's in these intentional moments of pause that we actually realize what we need to course correct, what we need to pivot, and whether we just need to have a full-blown reinvention. So I had one of these moments of intentional pause. For almost 2 years, I've been deep in the status aligned era, posting on social media quite frequently, maybe a good year and a half. And I've learned a lot in that time. I've been doing a lot of education-focused, education-led content. I went from posting a lot of the B-roll footage with the text on the screen because that's what the algorithm liked. And then I started getting more confident talking to camera, and I started posting talking to camera videos. And over time, I realized that, like a lot of people identify, you kind of become a slave to the algorithm. And when you don't show up, you get penalized. And if you're not posting on your stories frequently and people aren't engaging there, then your content just stops getting shown. And that can be really disheartening and draining because when you start a business, you don't necessarily anticipate how much work needs to go into content creation. And I'm sure for most people, they don't ever imagine that they're going to become a content creator. So here I was having my intentional pause, realizing that there was quite a big disconnect. I think on Instagram, the last time I made a post was maybe mid-November. So it's now mid-January. And I realized that it was draining me. I had so much going on in my life and I really wasn't getting much back. I was getting a handful of likes on my posts that I would spend ages creating. And energetically, there was just a really big mismatch. And I persevered for a long time. I didn't take this as a sign that I should give up, but I definitely decided that it was taking a lot more energy than I was willing to give. So I haven't completely stopped. I am on TikTok. Most of you probably don't follow me on there. I know a lot of people in my life don't even have TikTok, which is kind of freeing in a lot of ways. I'm just creating content because I like creating the content. And it's been quite complimentary in this intentional pause moment because in general, I felt like just creating the content for Status Aligned and doing the life mentoring wasn't actually the true expression of who I am in my entirety. I also realized that I wasn't bringing anyone along for the journey in my life. And if there's one thing that I've come to know, it's that people follow people, especially in the age of AI, where we're starting to wonder what's real and what's fake. If you're never letting people into your world, then I think that there is going to be a growing disconnect between the audiences of people who do and those who don't. If I'm being truly honest, I also felt like there's certain areas of my life that aren't close enough to the life that I'm working towards, that sharing the ins and outs wasn't leading by example, but I've definitely come to realize that that's absolutely not the case. I'm not here to be relatable to others, and I don't want you to feel like you should be relatable to others' comfort zones and limiting beliefs and things like that either. So it's not about showing all of the ins and outs to be like, I'm so relatable to you. No, that's not the position that I want to hold. I want to inspire you. I want to help educate you. I want to show you that we are in this together. But I am moving at pace towards the life that I want, and I hope that you come with me and do the same for yourself. So one day a couple of months ago, I was sitting contemplating social media and how it felt like such a slog and such an energy drain, and the energy exchange was not reciprocated. I was not getting anywhere near the engagement that I would need to make this sustainable or to grow my business or anything like that. And I thought, if this is what it takes to grow one business online, I can't imagine starting from scratch every single time I have a new business. Now, July last year, I did have an idea for another business, and I am actively working on that. I'll touch on that in a bit. It's in the tech and AI world. And yeah, it's such a learning curve. But I thought, oh my gosh, I have to build an audience for this business too. I can't even tell you how that felt. And that was my red flag. That was my indicator of, if I'm feeling just so much resistance at the idea of having to do this all again for this other business, how on earth am I going to have multiple thriving businesses? Which is exactly what I want for my life. I'm multi-passionate. I'm sure you are too. And I want to be able to live out the expression of that. And so this prompted a very honest conversation with myself. And this is the conversation that I urge you to have with yourself. Now, it doesn't matter if you are entrepreneurial and have your own business or if you don't. It does not matter what you do with your days. You can adapt this question. So I'll share with you what I asked myself. Imagine if there were two girls having a catch up over lunch or whatever, and one of them was a follower of mine and she really loved my content and she wanted to share my page or ask her friend if she knew about me. So if my follower turned to her friend and said, "Oh, do you know Lauren? She's ... What would be in that ... What do I want to be known for? How do I want people to talk about me? Do I want her to say, "Do you know Lauren? She's a life and mindset mentor"? No, I did not want her to say that. That's not what I wanted to be known for. That's not what I wanted my personal brand to be. And so I figured out exactly what I wanted her to say to her friend. And what it came down to was someone who was actually living the transformation, not just teaching the transformation, but showing it, showing that you can absolutely design a very intentional life, a life where you wake up most mornings and you absolutely love it and you feel fulfilled and you know that you're on purpose, even if it looks very different to everybody else around you. I want to lead by example. I want to show up in a different way. I want to be able to actually embody what I'm teaching and not just hide behind the education. I wanted women to look at me as an expander, not just a teacher. I wanted to let people into my world, and I have not been doing that. I've been really reluctant in a lot of ways. Now, you don't have to frame the question the same way that I did to me. Obviously, I'm trying to build a personal brand and have multiple businesses, and you might not want that, and that's totally fine. So you could think of it like, okay, when I'm towards the end of my life and somebody came up to me and wanted to write a book about me, how would they describe me? And so you can frame the question in a variety of different ways, but that might be a helpful place to start. Asking yourself this question, no matter how you phrase it, you're ultimately trying to get to the point where you can understand where you're at in your life right now, what the things are that you need to start including in your life or including more of in your life. Now, I'm very clear on what I want for my life. I know exactly where I'm aiming. So the realizations that came out of this question for me, it doesn't mean a full reinvention. It just means some course correction, some pivots, and that's okay. For a long time, I used to feel embarrassed about changing my mind. And that's something that we talk about on this show as well, is about getting really comfortable with being okay to change your mind and worrying a lot less about other people's perceptions of you. Because the women who make it, the women who are successful, those women, they get over other people's ceilings that they've placed on their own life and what they try to place on other people's. I want you to think about changing your mind as your path is just evolving, as you're getting closer and closer and closer to your goals and to your dreams. You're never going to be able to follow one straight path. You are going to have to evolve, and you are going to have to iterate, and you are going to have moments of intentional pause. And it's in those moments of intentional pause that you understand and you realize what you need to shed and what you need to bring more of into your life. So all of this together for me signaled I need to focus more on bringing people into my world, leading by example, and building a personal brand that is exterior to all of the businesses that I have. So a personal brand in addition to having my mentoring, a personal brand in addition to Not So Status Quo, a personal brand in addition to this new company that I am currently building. I do think having a personal brand is going to be an incredibly valuable thing to have. And people follow people. So as someone who does want to have multiple businesses, it just makes a lot more sense for me to focus a lot more of my energy into that leading by example, building my personal brand, than specifically into one business at a time. And 2025 for me was a really big growth year. It was a year where I was sowing the seeds for future harvest rather than harvesting the fruit. So every year can't be a year where you're just constantly harvesting fruit. You're going to have years where you're planting the seeds. So for example, this year I learned how to operate a podcast, build a podcast, edit podcasts. I was doing a lot more social media content. I've been learning a lot about tech and AI, and ultimately just really investing into my knowledge and into my skills. The results of that is I will be able to collect fruit from that self-investment for years to come. It wasn't a glossy, shiny year like other years where I'm traveling and, achieving goals left, right, and center. To be really transparent with you, a lot of my goals on my vision board did not get taken off. However, within the first couple of weeks of this year, I've already ticked off multiple. And it was all of the work and the investment into myself throughout 2025 that has allowed me to do that. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to be leaning into building a personal brand a lot more. And what that looks like on Instagram, I'm not too sure. What that looks like on TikTok, I will continue to show up there. So if you do want to see that behind the scenes content, I do post almost every day on TikTok. And so I'd love for you to join my world over there for a little bit if you've got the app. Like I said, I am working on a new tech company, an AI, specifically an AI business. It is very complementary to the work that I already do. And I hope that this is a product and a service that you will absolutely love as well. Because of the nature and the world of AI and tech and how fast moving it is, I haven't shared much about that journey as of yet, but the closer we get to launch, which hopefully will be in the first half of this year, I'll be able to share a lot more with you. But focusing on this business, in addition to everything else that I've got going on, has meant that I've needed to be really kind to myself and realize that if there are energy leaks, which was social media or Instagram particularly, or also producing weekly podcast episodes, it wasn't sustainable, and it currently isn't sustainable in this season of life, and that's okay. And yes, it did take a little bit to arrive at that place because I do have perfectionist tendencies, and so I set out to release a weekly episode, and in the second half of the year that wasn't the case, and that's okay. So I'm definitely getting a lot better at recognizing what I need to put my time and energy into, and the things that, even though I might like them and enjoy them, I need to reroute that energy. I also really want to focus on sharing information with you that shows you that you can live a very rich and regulated life. Rich in finances, money, 100%, but rich in connections and relationships, rich in experiences, and regulated in that you have a regulated nervous system most of the time. You have regulated hormones, your mental health, your health. Everything is regulated, that your dream life does not have to come at the cost of yourself and who you are. You can, in a lot of senses, have it all. Having it all at one time, sometimes no, sometimes yes. But above all, you absolutely can create the life that you truly, truly desire without sacrificing yourself in the process. So you'll be continuing to see some solo episodes for Not So Status Quo until the capacity comes back for me to be able to interview some incredible women. I feel so fortunate. I've had a number of very, very amazing women who have agreed to come on the podcast, and I've just put a little pause on that for now. But at some point in the next few months, I can't wait to bring on some more wonderful, inspirational people who can also show you that it's okay to not have it all figured out, and it's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to take leaps of faith even when the future is unknown, because you're worthy and you're capable and you are so deserving of all of the good things that life has to offer. Thank you for being here with me. I know this was a little bit more of personal sharing than I typically do, but the main things I really want to communicate with you is that there is not one linear path in life, and having intentional moments of pause are going to be the things that really help you get closer and closer to the life that you truly want. It doesn't have to be full reinvention. It can be small moments of course correction to make sure that where you're aiming, you're actually on the path towards it. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, like it, and I would love for you to follow me if you don't already. And if we're talking about social media, join me on TikTok, friends. Again, I can't believe I'm saying that, but here we are. I will go back onto Instagram. I don't know what my Instagram page will look like moving forward, because I do want to share a lot more personal. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you so much, and I look forward to you joining me in the next episode of Not So Status Quo.